Hello, and welcome everyone to the Emancipated Citizen Podcast. Here we talk to some of the bravest men and women out there fighting against authoritarianism, fighting for their freedom, fighting for their individuality, telling us about their journey. I am your host, zacaalrayyis, and with us backstage is Benjamin Snow. Today he's unable to make it, unfortunately, but he is helping out behind the scenes. And we have a very interesting guest today from Georgia. There's been a lot of news from Georgia regarding the new foreign agents law, which seems to be based on the Russian one, which has been used to crack down on civil society actors and LGBTQ plus organizations, a lot of different civil society actors, as I said. Georgia also has a very long history with the Soviet Union, with independence. There was a war in 2008. For a very brief overview of what we're going to talk about, we have a Georgian activist here with us, Gocha. Gocha, would you like to introduce yourself, talk about the history of Georgia a little bit, the kind of work that you're doing today in the direction that you'd like your country to go?
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Gocha, and I'm 18. I'm civil activist at Georgia, and I fight for freedom with my friends of my country. Before I'll start talking about the current events, I will tell you like brief history of my country and in context of Russian occupation and Russian influence. Throughout the whole history of Georgia, we have been fighting against Russian influence for our independence, and we should not forget what is happening in Ukraine now happened to Georgia in 1988, 2008. The first was like 1956. There was demonstrations in Georgia against Nikita Khrushchev, where this protest was brutally raided by Russian special forces, which caused many Georgian deaths. Then was trying to getting Georgian language out of the constitution by Russia. There was 1978 demonstrations in Tbilisi, capital of Georgia, which took place in response to an attempt by the Soviet government to change the constitutional status of Georgian language in here. After a new Soviet constitution, which was adopted in October 1977, the Supreme Soviet of the Georgian SSR considered the draft constitution, in which, in contrast to the constitution of 1936, Georgian was no longer declared to be the sole state language. So Georgian people fought, and we won. Georgian's previous status was protected. That was very crucial.
So the Russian language was no longer protected in Georgia by the 1970s, which is kind of an interesting aside here that I believe Stalin himself was a gangster from Georgia, wasn't he? I mean, he was the kind of person who was very intent on kind of proving himself as a real Russian.
Yep, he was proving himself as a Russian, of course. He did not consider himself as Georgian. And
Yeah. Yeah. How do Georgians talk about Stalin? How is Stalin being viewed, like, historically and to this day in Georgia, given that this is where he originally came from?
uh, most of the people hate him, and young people very hate him, and because Stalin had a big role in occupation of Georgia by Soviet Union. He gifted our lands to Azerbaijan. He gifted our lands to Turkey and also Armenia, and he made the Abkhazian region as an independent country, and yeah, he was enemy of his homeland where he was born, and he did not consider himself as a Georgian. His daughter says this, and many facts what he did to us, like repressions against Georgians, killing them, shooting, and so on. In 1937, there was like massive shooting of Georgian intellectuals. Like thousands of them were died in this repression from the Soviet regime. And if I'll continue this, what Russia did to us, there was a moment in 1989 when anti-Soviet pro-independence demonstration was crushed by the Soviet army, resulting in 21 deaths and hundreds of injuries. So we have the huge experience, like very bad and tragical experience with Russia, and this is like we are cursed by living next to the Russia, and this process continues today after war in Abkhazia in 1992 and 1993, and then in 2008, which I will talk about more like larger. This continues. Creep occupation is continue, and kidnapping people continue.
Yeah, so Georgia was occupied by the Soviets, made into a Soviet republic. Russian became the dominant language in Georgia, that in large part at the hands of Stalin, who does have roots from Georgia. At the same time, has this dream of this expansive Soviet homeland where people consider Georgian to be a kind of subcategory of the Russian identity. Was that historically common? Is it still common? And what about Georgian identity? Most Georgians speak Russian? Do they have close family ties to Russia? Is there very strong kind of independence, stream of intellectuality and thought in Georgia? Talk to us a little bit about Russian identity, both on the side of people like Stalin and people on the other side of the spectrum, people who are more European oriented.
Sure.
People like you and people like Saakashvili, people who are more European oriented, yeah.
First of all, this Russian identity is all founded on the imperialism. Their identity is all about imperialism. That's what they are doing in the whole world. And of course, Stalin played a huge role in developing this identity of Russians. He created Orthodox Christianity, like this Russian style, which is very rooted in Georgia now, and this is like Kremlin, other building in Georgia who are really against our European strive. If we look at the people, elder people in Georgia, they are speaking in Russian like more than youngsters. Young generation really don't know Russian at all, and I'm very happy about that because we should cancel this all kinds of connection with Russia because they are doing nothing good to us. From the past, it's almost 300 years. Russia is fighting against our sovereignty, independence. They even stole independence of our church. Our church was kind of occupied by the Russian regime, and they were painting the walls of churches in Georgia because they wanted to clear the history of Georgia, like this identity. And because they are very aggressive and angry. Russians are very aggressive about towards Georgian identity because Georgian identity is all about fighting for freedom, fighting for independence. We not only prove this with our actions, our fighting, many deaths, even our Georgian Legion fights in Ukraine now for freedom. But also we had many pro-European and pro-independence thinkers here in Georgia. For example, Ilya Chapchavadze, who is also called as a father of Georgia, modern Georgia, because in 90s and 20s, when Tsarist Russia almost finished Russification of Georgia, this person rescued us, rescued Georgian language, and if not Ilya Chapchavadze, maybe we could not speak in Georgian anymore. Yeah, he made he was in the source of the liberal of Georgia, and yeah, that's what's all about.
So yeah,
Our identity, fighting for
Ilya
freedom.
Chavza would be his name.
Ilya Chapchavadze.
So he was basically responsible for standardizing the Georgian language and making it something that is more in the cultural memory, I suppose. Now, today seems like, according to most polling, that the vast majority of Georgians are not aligned with Russia. And so over 70% of Georgians would like to be, very much like to become a member of the EU, right? Even though more recently the EU has rejected Georgian candidacy for multiple reasons. Of course, one of those reasons is the current prime minister, right? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name, I'm trying my best. It's Ivanishvili.
Mm-hmm.
Who is...
He's not the prime minister of Georgia.
He's not? He's not the prime minister of Georgia.
But he is like a ruling country in shadow. He's
like a Russian-made oligarch from the 90s, right? And he runs the Georgian Dream Party, which sort of has a lot of power in the Georgian parliament and in the Georgian legislature. And in the Georgian legislature, how did we get to this point? Someone who is, or an idea that is so unpopular among the electorate, how did it gain so much power in a country that's supposed to be a democracy? We can go back to 2008. And of course, you have Saakashvili and the Union of Citizens back then, right? So Saakashvili was the president of Georgia between 2004 and 2013. Putin felt threatened by him and made some very explicit threats to his person as well. Russian troops were then moved into Georgia in 2008, and so you can talk to us loosely about this development. I'm very interested to know about how the situation moved into a situation where the Russian oligarchs basically have taken control over Georgia.
Well, I will start a little bit back in Saakashvili coming to the power and 2008 war, Georgia and Russian war. Like, first of all, in 2008, like when Saakashvili was, first of all, the Saakashvili, let's talk about him. He was a really pro-European guy. He is, and he went to the power with the support of Georgian people, almost 95%. He was doing well until he decided to become the one-person ruler of this country, like autocratic power, and this was his very huge mistake. He was doing great. He developed the whole country from the zero, from the failed state to a very European state, and his government and his group of people made this mistake, which leads us to the busy Ivanishvili and the situation where we are now. I'll talk about 2008 Georgian-Russian War because I think it's very important for our listeners to here like it's the clear like nearest history of Georgian Russian conflict as a result of the ethnic cleansing carried out by Russia and its proxies in the Skhin Valley region in 2008. More than 330,000 people were forced to leave their homes. The vast majority of their houses were burned down by the preparators to prevent them from returning home. And as in Ukraine, Russia, months before the outbreak of the war, as well as during the hostilities, Russia employed a wide range of hybrid warfare tactics, such as information operations, energy, economic and trade blackmail, cyber attacks, passportization of the population in the occupied territories. And before Russia invaded Georgia, they were preparing their military near the border of Georgia. Uh, Both Dmitry Medvedev, then president of Russian Federation, and Vladimir Putin, the prime minister, later admitted that the Russian government had planned the invasion in late 2006 to prevent Georgia's integration into Euro-Atlantic institutions. This was huge operation, against Georgia, not to join Euro-Atlantic institution, European Union and NATO. This was the reason why war started in Ukraine also, and yeah,
Yeah. Same reason it started in Ukraine, and well, as we can see in Ukraine, there's a lot of talk from the Putin regime about basically about mistreatment of Russian minorities. For one, about Nazis in Ukraine, that kind of thing. Well, doing some research about this topic, I've been seeing a lot of parallels with 2008 and Georgia, and with the Russian government also talking about discrimination and mistreatment of Russian speakers, that kind of thing. There was a lot of talk about the situation in Ukraine, of course, and I do notice lately that there is, well, just a point on the side, parallels that we have with the Nazis and the way that they started World War II, right? Is there a lot of talk about that? Fears about a bigger regional war, starting with Ukraine, moving on to Georgia, and spreading out through the post-Soviet part of the world. What's the end goal there with Putin? I know it's a very big question, but you've probably given it some thought, probably a little bit more than me, right?
of course, the answer of this question is very easy. If we stand on the Putin statements, the 20th century most tragic moment was the destroying of the Soviet Union. And he, of course, wants to restore the borders of the USSR. And that's what the West should oppose. And that's what why they should stand together, help Ukraine, help Georgia, and solve all these conflicts. Before Ukrainian war started, most of the Western countries did not any threats coming from Russia. Like they were thinking that Russia will become the democratic country and we'll be friends. No, that's not like that. We Georgians know that friendship with Russia does not is not a good idea, and this is horrible to become the tyranny regime's friend, because they will occupy you as they are doing in Ukraine, as they are doing every day in Georgia. And I think that I hope so that Russia will fail and pig empire must fall. And I think that USA will play a huge role doing that, as in Second World War against Hitler. Um, and until if I will go back to Georgia, and if we talk about Bidzina Ivanishvili, you had a question about that, and I did not answer. Until 2012, successful Georgia was an inspiration to the post-Soviet countries and was an example of how they could develop without Russia. And Russia's 2008 attack on Georgia was aimed to punish this success story, to restore the Soviet Union borders. Uh, yeah, of course, the war stopped Georgia progress toward NATO for many years, but then in 2012, when Putin said when Putin said that Georgian people would do that, what the Russian tax could not do. Uh, he asked with his usual cynicism, well, when do you have elections? Like Putin asked, when do you have elections to Georgians? And years later, Alexei Dugin said that even if Russia had brought its tanks to Tbilisi during the war, it could not have installed a better government than one sitting in Tbilisi today. They are talking about Georgian dream. They are talking about Bidzina Ivanishvili, who is ruler of this country. And last year he came back to the politics when Georgia was uh, Georgia had given candidate status of European Union, and Russia will do everything not to join Georgia, not to let Georgia join the European Union. And President of Georgia now, Zurabishvili, said that Georgia dream is actually a Russian dream. She's saying this directly, and yeah, that's all. Like uh, Georgian dream were if the Georgian dream were an independent political force, the answer would be unequivocal no. But Georgian dream is not independent. Its consistent anti-Western rhetoric and propaganda exhibited near total synchronization with Russia, with anti-LGBT statements, with anti-Western statements, and they're trying to stigmatize the whole country people who are pro-Europeans. And as you mentioned, the researches prove that almost 90% of Georgians support Euro integration. And this law, which is draft yet, Russian style for agents.
So, because of the law. So, as I was saying, the Georgian Dream Party came into power after this debacle, after all of those conflicts. I'm interested to know how this would happen in a country where the population is so pro-EU, according to most surveys. How does a political party that doesn't reflect the will of the people, come into power like that? How did Ivashvili and the Dream Party end up having so much power? So, talk to us a little bit about the structure of the government in Georgia.
Okay. Well, they when they went to power in 2012, they were not publicly announced that they were a pro-Russian force. Like they would not say that we are Kremlin project, and because of that, this Belarusization processes were going slowly. Uh, in the beginning, they had many pro-European politicians in their party. For example, David Usufashvili, David Bakradze, like Irakli Alasania. They were pro-Americans, and these people studied in the USA, and they were very pro-West people. And then Ivanishvili, like it's their fourth run for elections, and it's horrible. Now Ivanishvili is trying to maintain the status quo in his favor, and there is an endemic high-level corruption and fragile state institutions. He'll do his best to maintain this power, and this is like annexation of Georgia without force. This is hybrid war, and they are spending a lot of money. They are spending a lot of money on the church, Orthodox Church of Georgia, on the televisions like Emedi and the Post TV. They are like pro Moscow, like they have the narrative which is very famous in the Russia Today on this Kremlin statements, Kremlin propaganda turns out, and yeah, that was a Kremlin project that many of my friends in Georgia who now are fighting against Bidzina Ivanishvili voted for him because like he was they did not wanted Saakashvili anymore. That was the one reason that Saakashvili did many. Saakashvili's regime did many bad things to the people of Georgia. They were beating protesters in streets more than this now. This government. Also, second reason was that Ivanishvili's group was very pro-European, but now we are facing this trouble again, and we will will prevail on them and will kick out this tyrannical regime of Georgia. And this is hard situation now. Hard situation. We need your help to rid ourselves from this tyrannical regime of a Russian oligarch. And this Russian-style law introduced by the ruling party goes against the constitution of Georgia and splits us from our dearest partners around the globe. And that's the reason why our Western partners criticize them very harsh. I can quote tens of them how they're criticizing Bidzina Ivanishvili and the Georgian dream. Yeah, each day we stray further away from justice, civility, morality, rule of law, democracy, and our constitutional goal to one day become a part of European Union. But not all is lost. We are not tired, we are not weak, and we will change the future of this country. Now we can move on this Russian law, and we can discuss a little bit about.
So yeah, thanks for saying that. That's a very important. It's a very interesting phenomenon. Of course, the how the Kremlin is used to manipulating elections. I think it is. So it's kind of showing cracks in the Western capitalist model of democracy. Talking about the Western style of democracy, it seems like the Putin regime has shown some serious cracks in the current model that we have, which basically is one where we have a free market and the means of production and the financing of politics happens on the free market, while elections and direct political decisions are made directly by the electorate, and Putin has quite ingeniously been able to manipulate elections in Georgia. He has been able to manipulate elections in Ukraine, even in the United States. Yeah, who knows how far this is going to go? Yeah. How do you how do you see the future of Russian democracy going, given this whole situation? I suppose this very unfortunate situation with the way that Western democracy is structured, and Putin's ability to use oligarchs in such a way to undermine it. I guess this goes on a deeper kind of level of theory, but I'm interested to see if you have any thoughts on that.
Sure, I have thought about that, but not on the broader scale. I am thinking about that about my country and Ukraine, and of course, I know that I know that Russia must go out from the territories which Russian occupational forces occupied, and they are losing this power to the South Caucasus. And they will also lose this power in Ukraine, and we have will have new world order in many years. Um, this war will not stop very soon, but in Ukraine will not stop very soon. But I hope that Russia will go out from Ukraine's territories, and Ukraine will be free as Georgia. And if everything is all about West, what they will do, because we need help, Georgians need help, Ukrainians need help. People in the Middle East who are fighting against terrorism need help. So if they want freedom in whole world, and which will affect also their economics and their um, democracy in their countries too, they must protect the rights of peaceful people who are living in Ukraine and Georgia, and they must stop Putin, and not like not all empire lasted many years. They all destroyed, and Putin's empire, pig empire, will not be exception. Putin's empire will be one of them who will destroy, and I'm 100% sure about that. But I'm very heartbroken that many peaceful people are dying with about that in Ukraine, and died many in Georgia in the 90s and 2008, and in Chechnya, and different countries where Russia invaded. And I'm very happy that I look development of the like political narrative in the West. Like for example, Emmanuel Macron went out and he said that if he will think that it's necessary, he will send troops to Ukraine, and that's good. Or not only Russia must fare us with nuclear weapons, like West also has have nuclear weapon, and um, uh, they must show more force on Putin, because if Ukraine will fail, I don't think so it will happen, but if Ukraine will fail and fall, uh, next will be Georgia, next will be Baltic countries, and then will be Poland, and will go much farther, escalate, and much bigger regional and continental conflict. And if it's not too late, they should stop Russia now in Ukraine. Now,
Sure, I
yeah.
mean, yeah, I mean, with World War II, I suppose, the kind of luxury of being able to wage a total war against your enemies, because, well, at the end, those enemies can be completely destroyed, and then you get a new Germany, and history goes on. But in the modern day, with weapons of mass destruction, that's not an option. Yeah, you can't just completely destroy your enemy, and have the world just go on, because yeah, you're gonna have a nuclear apocalypse, and the whole world is going to go to shit if we have that
Of
again.
course, we
It's
oppose
like,
that, and that's because Russia must stop now, and the next nuclear weapon will not be necessary.
yeah, it's like Einstein said, I believe, that I don't know with which weapons World War III is going to be fought, but World War IV is going to be fought with sticks and stones. Yeah, that's a civilization ending prospect. Just a small detour that I thought would be a very interesting kind of thing to cover, which seems to be like the re-emergence of socialist thought in Eastern Europe and in the post-Soviet states. Like I mentioned before, this model of Western democracy, where the market is still free and oligarchs can influence elections quite significantly, seems to have its own problems. And so it seems to me that some people in Russia and some people in Eastern Europe are looking back into democratic thoughts of a more socialist tint, so to speak. I think a big part of it is solving the oligarch problem. I think most prevalently you can see it in places like Russia and Georgia, Ukraine, of course, but I mean, even in the United States, it's inescapable how, how very rich people, just because they have so much money to influence the elections. You have Elon Musk, Donald Trump, those types of characters, who basically you can call them oligarchs. Yeah. So, what is there any insights that you have on the ground in Georgia, that kind of relate to a more socialist shift, that you can see in the more younger population, and if I can get on a more personal level, how, like, where do you stand politically on this question?
Well, Georgia in Georgian constitution it's wrote that Georgia is capitalist country. But there is more socialist market because the market is ruled by government. Their influence is huge on it. Um, for me, I'm free market, more pro free market and liberal, and I support every human's rights that will be LGBT or like other minorities. I support them, of course, and uh, it's very bad that in Georgia their rights are not protected as it must be. And um, uh, to be honest, uh, the Georgian nation is very tolerant, and they do not. They are not as homophobic as many nations in West, for example, or in Asia. There's the fact that not not tens and hundreds of LGBT minorities are not dying here. That's the fact. Because Georgian identity and thinking is different. But we have pro-Russian government who tries everything to discriminate these minorities, um, like to become more conservative and bribe the votes of electorals who are elders, who are people who lived in.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I hope it's okay if I'm pushing back and kind of poking your your political conceptions a little bit. It's just something that's been on my mind lately, that I've been trying to explore, this kind of reemergence of socialist thought within Eastern Europe, and the prospects of a functional democracy, given this political financial system that's controlled by oligarchs. Yeah. I mean, even within a free market system, how it does seem absolutely imperative at this point that one of the biggest problems facing Eastern Europe and Russia is the sort of marriage between finance and politics. Yeah. And, investment economics and the political sphere, where you have entrepreneurs and oligarchs basically influencing elections in such significant ways. Even whether it's from a more neo-Marxist perspective or from a free market capitalist perspective, or is there any insight that you have or have thought about in terms of solving this issue and making it so that everybody has an equal say in politics, and where you can't rule everything with money in that obscene way that we see today in Eastern Europe.
Oh, well, to be honest, I'm not very looked in the situation in Western Europe, but I know what's going on with about oligarchs, and there's a huge problem. Oligarchs are problem in Ukraine also, weird
Yes.
problem, and in Georgia, and I think that free market is a problem, and this good environment for becoming oligarch. But that's the fact, and what we can do is that fight against oligarchs, not giving them stage in West, not supporting them, sanctioning them. The West must sanction Ivanishvili as well as other oligarchs, and this worked well in Ukraine when West sanctioned Russian oligarchs and businessmen, and their money were given to heroes in Ukraine who fight for their freedom. Um, yeah, that's my opinion that the collective West um, should stand against oligarchy, because the oligarchy is problem for smaller nations more than huge nations, because in the USA the Trump can influence cannot influence as much as Ivanishvili can influence in Georgia, because in Georgia there lives 3 million people. Ivanishvili has $7 billion, and it's like much bigger influence here. And I think that
Sure.
uh,
Sure. So talking about the new foreign agents law that was passed in Georgia, there's been a lot of news. There have been a lot of protests about that. Basically, what I understood from the law is that organizations that are funded 20% or more from foreign sources would have to be registered in some way with the government. The law is based on, or is very similar to the way it was formulated in Russia, and there it was used to crack down on civil society and pro LGBT organizations and that kind of thing. Now, the idea of having organizations that are in part funded by foreign uh, uh, agents, it seems on its face not to be such a malignant idea. It doesn't seem so bad, and such that people have a right to know where their organizations are funded from, and you don't want something like Russian oligarchs influencing elections without anyone knowing as such. So, I mean, on a very surface level, I can give a sort of devil's advocate contrarian defense to that. Tell me what the problem is with this kind of defense of that of a law like that, and tell me about the way that it went on in Russia, what you fear this is going to lead to, and the kind of action that you're taking on the ground against those more recent decisions by your government.
thank you. Good question. Of course, this is Russian law. and we have many arguments why this is Russian law, and uh, I was saying that um, this Russian law was adopted in Russia in 2012, and and in fact, this law, which was adopted in Russia, was much like it was not as powerful as it is draft law here in Georgia. Like this is more strict, and people who gain 20 more than 20% of the West funding will be mentioned as organizations pursuing their interests of a foreign power, like which is translated in Georgian language as an agent. Their argument, like people who support this law, they have only one argument, that is transparency. And we have counter-argument about that. All money who West is putting here in Georgia is already transparent. They are not gifting organizations in Georgia this money. This money is already declared in the financial Ministry of Finance here in Georgia. Also, this money is already written and declared in on the websites of these organizations, and of course, the government has access on the transactions from different countries in the country. Uh,
Sure. So what
this
what
is
does
this
the
is
what
first
does
argument.
this law bring?
This is
What's
Yep.
new?
This is first argument. Discredit organizations who tries to develop the Georgia, who tries to spread the knowledge, spread the development. Who the West is funding here, the like agriculture, education, healthcare, and the Russia don't want that. The Russia's two main goal is in Georgia is that to put Georgia in the box where the free world is not heard, as well as it is in Belarus, and second, to split roads from Europe, like Georgia's and Europe's roads, and develop Russian influence in Georgia. I mentioned first argument. Second argument is that there is not any locking mechanism in this law. For example, in FARA, which is in USA, this law, like they are using this argument that FARA's law is also transparency law, and why don't you want that law, Russian law, in Georgia? Like it's like FARA. No, FARA only works against lobbyists who are working in Congress and Senate and other governmental organizations who are the carrier of the foreign political ideology. And this law, which is going to adopt in Georgia, is against the NGOs and TVs, medias, critical medias, and this is second argument. Third argument is that if this law will be adopted, they will have tool to repress media and NGOs with going into their buildings and these organizations in every 6 months. This is written in this law. They can go here and they can bring their personal information, and they can work on it, and they can also publish it. Like this is very crucial. They can publish.
So it's a lot of personal
Yeah,
intimidation and invasion of privacy. In addition, like it's not just about financial
of course.
transparency. It's
They
like
are.
there's a lot of intimidation that goes with it. A lot of invasion of privacy.
Yep.
A sort of intellectual terrorism, if you will, where free journalists, people, it's people working for organizations that are mostly internationally funded, like say Amnesty International or Human Rights Watch, would not feel free to do their work
And
so
against
freely, right?
organizations who are monitoring elections in Georgia, and
Yeah,
this
and it's important to be
Belarusization
clear,
process, what they want.
and it's important to be clear as well that you know a lot of those NGOs, if you're talking about pro-LGBT organizations, if you're talking about Amnesty International, pro-human rights organizations for election integrity, those are not necessarily organizations that are driven by specific political ideologies. They are basically the backbone of the international civil society, so that democracies around the world can look each other eye to eye and have this sort of integrity, right? So I
I
think
want
this
to
is a very
add one
important
thing.
point
Sorry.
to make about this law. Yes, go on, please.
Yeah. This law, this style, the same style of law which is going to adopt here was adopted in Hungary, in the member of the European Union, and the Court of European cancelled this law. Like, this law is against the European Union's law, and if they will adopt this law in here, we could not join Euro-Atlantic institutions, and the candidate status of Georgia will be dismantled and cancelled. That's one. And as I mentioned, they're trying to make the Belarus here. That's the fact that they are proposing Georgia's ruling party proposed anti-LGBT law that I will talk about more, and they also adopted offshore law for Bidzina Ivanishvili to let him bring all his money from offshores without taxing, and that's the fact that he is preparing for sanctions, and yeah. So everything, the West money is transparent in Georgia. This law is against Europe and the West. And when Moscow, Dugin, Medvedev, and Putin says that uh, they like this law and in Georgia, and they say that you are on the correct path, and contrary, that your Western partners say that don't adopt this law, and this law is against Georgian constitution. Who should you trust? Come on.
Yeah, yeah. You have quite the point there. Tell us about your activity on the ground and the kind of work that is being done by young people like yourself and people who are fighting for their freedoms. Yeah. Tell us about basically. Yeah.
Well, um,
Tell us about what some organizations are doing, and tell us about the kinds of events that you have been involved in, and what you're trying to achieve.
um, Georgia is resistant. As we say, the Georgian people, almost 90% is pro-European, and they will fight for European values, of course. This process will stop now very soon, and more next days, next weeks, and not months are very crucial for Georgia. And history is watching us, so we are coming every day outside in the streets and protest peacefully this law, and protest our pro-Russian government. Yesterday there was largest protest, like almost 100,000 people went out, and this is not just one moment, one event. Like, this protest continues more than 2 weeks already, and thousand and 10,000 of people every day comes out. Um, we fight for our freedom, as I said, and we will stop this law. We are not tired, we are not weak, and we will not let these Russians uh, make Belarus in Georgia. And we want in Europe, and we want in European Union, and Georgia's future is European Union. Of course, this is written in Georgia's constitution that all government is obligated to connect more and more to the Euro-Atlantic institutions, and our government goes against this law, and we have full right to oppose them. And I have one. Uh, uh, I have to say to our international partners, our friends overseas, to help to rid ourselves from tyrannical regime of a Russian oligarch, and to talk to your representatives to sanction them. Sanction would help immediately, and this process is started. European Union and European Commission made resolution where they talked about sanctioning Ivanishvili and the heads of special forces here in Georgia who tyrannically beat protesters. You can watch short videos how the protesters were beaten. This is horrible. This only happens in Belarus, and well, Belarus will, Georgia will become Belarus. You will be dead, everyone, over our dead bodies. We will not let them make Georgia here dictatorship. And protest continues every day. Tomorrow we have a huge protest on 30 April, and today is second reading of the law. And I don't know what will happen after this podcast, how the situation will go on, because temperature is rising every day here in Tbilisi. The protesters are coming out to their cities in every city, large city in Georgia. Also, Georgians protest this law all overseas, abroad, from different countries from Europe and USA and the Middle East, and we oppose these very much. And we did it that last year they dismantled this law, but today they propose this law again. Um, I don't know what is
It
it's
was
called. This,
dismantled and it was proposed again. Yeah, I see.
yeah, yeah. It was proposed again because last year people showed them force, and today we are showing them force, but they are not going to stop. That must be mentioned that they will not stop because they have nothing to lose now. If they will stop, the Russia will stop here in Georgia. Russian influence will stop here. They will lose these elections, uh, and Putin don't want that. Of course, they will try to bring this law adoption to adopt this law to finish it, but will not stop people. People will fight and die for freedom, and as we did here in past years, and as Ukrainians do heroically in their homeland. And I think that Russia will fall because good will prevail over the evil. That's the rule, unwritten rule of the life.
Sure, sure. So lastly, I wanted to ask on an electoral kind of constitutional level. So there is a lot of hope placed, as we've talked lately, also to a Russian activist, putting a lot of hope on Putin dying, and on this Russian imperialism kind of crumbling on its own. What about electoral type of solutions? Yeah, like, is there a way to reform Georgian politics in such that, yeah, those kinds of laws don't get passed, and yeah, you're able to elect a government that is more representative of the people in the near future? Are there elections coming up? Is there anything to pay attention in terms of Georgians, what they can do to elect a more representative government?
Sure, we want more representative government, and we want that we want our words to be heard, and this government will be finished in these elections. I don't know if we'll go to the elections. Maybe they will be. It's possible that they can finish before elections. There is thinking about technical government that. Who will the opposition will manage this technical government, who will adopt laws which is necessary for euro integration, for to start negotiations joining in European Union after the candidate status, and everything is still going on, and everything's fine here. People's charge is full, and as we said, will not past mistakes, and we Georgia will be member of the European Union very soon. I'm 100% sure about that because people's um, effort show this.
Yeah, I think we have a good kind of overview of the situation in Georgia and the kind of important work that people like you are doing. By the way, Ben did mention that there's a podcast called the History of Georgia's Saakashvili. Sorry, you pronounce it for me, please. Saakashvili. The History of Georgia's Saakashvili is a podcast name that Ben would recommend to anybody who would like to learn more about the history of the country. Other than that, is there any last thing that I didn't ask you about, maybe, or a kind of political project that you'd like to talk about that people should pay attention to? Something about your experience. Give us some last words. Anything that's weighing on your heart at this point before we wrap this up.
Um, well, yeah, of course, I have one wish that West must become more strict against these oligarchs and against these pro-Russians, and they should not make the mistakes that they did already in past. Like Georgia was very close to the NATO in 2008, and the infantillation of the West, we could not do that, and that everything happened, or not only in Georgia but also in Ukraine. So now the mistake cannot be made because we are in the bridge where there is falling, there is a large place where we can be jump the so um, sanction our government. That's only wish by me, and support on every stage. This protest is not podcasted Western, and that's very bad also. New York, CNN, BBC uh, show these people, and I want also that, and I want to thank you.
You're saying
And,
the Western media doesn't show the voices of the Georgian people as much as you would like them to, right?
yep, yeah, and
Yeah.
also, I want to thank for your support and everything, and I want to wish Ukraine win against a pig empire, and I am sure 100% that Ukraine will win, and their goals will be achieved. Russia will kicked out from Ukraine, kicked out from Georgia, kicked out from Moldova, and we three countries will be members of the European Union very soon. Thank you.
Uh, I mean, yeah. After our conversation, I think it should be clear to our listeners why the Georgian and the Ukrainian struggle are more or less one and the same struggle, and why a lot of Georgians have actually gone to Ukraine to help with the fighting. Um, because, well, Ukraine falls, Georgia's probably next, right? So yes, this is a very dangerous empire that has a lot of very dangerous ambitions and needs to be stopped. It is very unfortunate how self-obsessed the West can tend to be sometimes, and how very important voices from across the world are often forgotten, which is actually the reason why we started this podcast. And we really appreciate being appreciated and recognized for that. Thank you for your kind words there. We really hope we can bring your voice to the forefront, and
Thank you for listening. Thank you, and thank you for spreading word. This means a lot to us.
so yeah, thank you everybody for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, your night. Hope this brought you something. Stay healthy, stay safe, and goodbye.